Thank you, and what I'm going to try to do is, it really is the case, as we just heard from Alan, you know, everybody doesn't go to college, everybody doesn't need to go to college. It's not about that. It turns out it's about how do we design a society wherein we can be responsive to whatever we encounter, that we can adjust, that we can adapt, that families can move forward. Some families will need more educational attainment, formal education. Some families will need less formal educational attainment. It depends on the trajectories and their interests and their desires and so forth. So what I want to try to do today is just walk a little bit through some facts. I'm going to be a little bit professorial. I apologize for that. It turns out I am a professor. If we can go to my presentation. Maybe. If not, I'm ready. So investing in Arizona's future, I want to get across a couple of points. The most important point that we need to understand is that the models of the past, as successful as they have been for the economies of the past, are not going to be successful in the same way in the future. The rate of technological change, the rate of economic change, the rate of social change and social complexity is so rapid that we've never encountered any time before in our history, where changes are occurring at this rate within single generations. Not 3 or 4 generations, not 5 generations or 10 generations, but single generations. So let's look at what it would take to conceptualize an entire educational system. And I'm going to end with this notion of even those of us in higher education and throughout the entire educational enterprise rethinking education itself. This is a famous professor, Albert Einstein. It's really important. You cannot solve a problem from the same consciousness that created it. So whatever we have, you know, we only have about 75 or 80% of our students graduating from high school. We have a low college going rate. We have labor issues, all kinds of issues, because we're still believing that all we need to do is to just think about doing the same thing. It's more than that. It's more than just the money. The money is really, really important. That's insufficient. It's money into new designs, money into new ways of doing things, money into measured responsible outcomes. An additional $1 billion of resources has to come with an additional $1 billion of expectation, an additional set of outcomes. And so here, it's really important, increased educational attainment yields not just, and Senator Fan spoke of some of these things, it enhances tax returns to the state, reduced unemployment, improved health status. These are not things that we made up. These are factoids. These are facts that result from higher levels of educational attainment. Just as a sidebar, I'm what's called a Section 8 kid. Who knows what a Section 8 kid is? Well, I'm a Section 8 kid. I grew up in either public housing or military housing in my life. I have siblings that didn't graduate from high school. I have brothers-in-law that didn't graduate from high school that have been tradesmen their entire life, who are now approaching 60 or in their 60s, as am I. And I can tell you that their lives have been challenged on the health side. Very, very challenged on the health side. This is a chart, believe it or not. I want you to look at 2 things on this chart. This is wages in 1975. You need to see how closely and tightly coupled they are in 1975. These are wages today, varying based on educational attainment across the entire economy. I didn't design the system. It's where the system has gone. It's really, really important to note that this is a fundamental shift. It doesn't take away from the need for any of the skill sets that we have in our economy. It's just an indication that there's a dramatic difference in the present allocation of wages from the present economy we have based on educational attainment. It turns out that from a statewide perspective, there's a dramatic linkage between educational attainment overall, the people buying the homes and advancing the economy need resources also, in addition to the people that are building the homes, to Alan's comments. And so let's just take a look at this chart. So this chart basically says that if this is per capita GDP, think of this as, you know, the entire economy divided by the number of people living in that economy. That is the entire economy itself. And this is the level of educational attainment as it goes up, percentage of people with bachelor's degrees. It's not college per se. It's how many people educated at that level does an economy have? And if you have that many educated at that level, what happens within that economy? There's Arizona. You can see where we are. You can see Colorado, Washington, Texas. So I don't know, someone explain to me why the Colorado economy is 25% richer per person than the Arizona economy. Well, if you look at every variable, 1,000 variables, this variable explains the answer to the highest level. That is, how educated is at least some of the population driving that economy forward. This is educational attainment growth on a national scale. This is basically bachelor's degree, associate's degree, no post-secondary degree, certificate or license. This is just the variability between the states. Arizona is the one on the right that I've circled. Arkansas, Louisiana, West Virginia, Mississippi, Nevada, Kentucky, Alabama, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Arizona. Now again, it doesn't mean that everyone has to go to college. It doesn't mean that everyone has to attain some formal educational experience equal to everyone else. It doesn't mean that. It does mean that it turns out that there's a correlation between the number of people that do and the size and robustness of the economy. This is really, really difficult for people to sometimes completely process. So now imagine, this is what the data shows, 68% of all jobs going forward are going to require some kind of post-secondary education. Now that doesn't mean that there aren't jobs. There are, obviously 32% that don't, and 68% that do. In 1970, that 68% number was 8%. And again, it's just the change in the way that things work. We have labor shortages, by the way, in all categories of employment. There are labor shortages for tradespeople. There are labor shortages for construction workers. There's labor shortages for college graduates. There's labor shortages for associate's degrees. There's labor shortages throughout the entire economy. And you say, how is that possible? It's possible because we have deep misalignment of educational attainment. We have slow speed. We do not have mechanisms. Everything's fragmented. We've been wondering lately in Arizona whether or not the word education also meant college in Arizona. Because people talk about education, 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 K-12. So, Senator, I'm very, very happy that your proposal includes universities trying to find a way to make them accessible by investing in them to students so that the families can afford to send their children to the universities. But also it's the notion of us being prepared for this. So Arizona, where we see things going, we have about 80% public high school graduation rate. It's not even in terms of ability coming out of those high school graduation rate. There's some slight improvement in high school graduation rate. We have to get it to 90 to 100%. Now that's hard for people to process. 90 to 100%. So the number of jobs in the economy, even with labor shortages in certain sectors like construction, the number of jobs in the economy for which only a high school diploma or less is the minimum educational requirement are 25% fewer since the year 2007. So the economy has shifted. It doesn't mean that we don't need those people. It means that there's a shift in the overall structure of the market itself. So we need 80 to 100% high school graduates, and then we need them going on, some of them, the state objective is 60%. That's 60% of those high school graduates. 40% don't go on. 60% will go on to some kind of post-secondary certificate. Well, how's our factory for dealing with that? So this is the number of people in the economy. If you estimate how many new people educated at that level does the state's economy need to be, in a sense, it's the same argument as Alan's argument. How are we going to produce enough people to be able to operate and fill those jobs that do require a college education? It turns out that it looks like there's a 200,000 degree shortfall. So this is what we presently have. This is what each of the universities are presently producing. Grand Canyon, the various public universities, we've got them all right here. This is the shortfall for the economy going forward. Now this is really difficult to grasp. How can there be a shortfall? There's a shortfall in employment opportunities, there's a shortfall overall, and so the factory, if you will, for producing this particular skill level, I wouldn't even say level, this particular skill type is insufficient. So what do? Well, one thing you do, and we appreciate this so much at ASU, is you allow a new kind of university to emerge. with this charter. Our university is built on the idea of inclusion versus exclusion as the measurement of success, and the measured success of the student, no matter what family the student comes from. Our research is to benefit the public, which is really, really important. And then lastly, we try to take responsibility for the outcomes of our community. How can we be built around the notion of this community being successful? It also means taking a look at this model. This is the traditional timeline. And this is something, Superintendent and others that are here, regents that are here, this is something that we really need to spend a lot of time on, and we're really focusing on this at ASU. The way the system works now is you are educated before you go to school within your family or sometimes within institutions. Then you go to K-12 institutions, and then you launch your career. You might be in the trades. You might be, as one of my sisters is a secretary in a hospital ward. You might be a carpenter, like one of my brothers-in-law. You might be a motorcycle repairman, like the brother behind me in my life. And so that's their career. They're moving forward. You might go on to technical school. And thankfully, we have a number that do, but we need a lot more to be able to go to technical school. And then you start your career. Or, in the traditional way, this is the traditional model, you perhaps go to the university, a community college, and then to the university. You get an associate's degree, a degree, and maybe a graduate degree, and there's your career. And then your formal education is over. That's a system that no longer works. That's a system no longer adequate to the complexity and the speed of change. We propose this notion of your family and your K-12 school producing a lifelong learner. Once you're done with that, if you go into construction, great. If you go on to the university, great. If you go into trade school, great. If you go into a technical skill, great, tremendous, fantastic. Everything after that point will change. The nature of construction, the nature of engineering, the nature of systems, autonomous systems, the nature of banking, the nature of all jobs will change. What we're suggesting going forward then is that the lifelong learner then for the rest of their life, we made this yellow and red, or if it's not too ASU-centric, maroon and gold. And the purpose for that is to suggest that what we need is to now start thinking about a person's lifelong education. They come in and out of the workforce, in and out of the educational opportunity. We want as many as possible to be able to go to college, as many as possible to be able to go to college. Here's a problem that we have right now in the structure that we have. We've completely restructured the public universities in Arizona to operate in a way where the universities are self-operating, and what's needed from the legislature or from the public's investment through this initiative or other means is not an investment so much in the university, but an investment in the student, the person going to the university. So right now at ASU, in the system that we have right now, and thankfully we've been allowed by the leaders of the state to run a very entrepreneurial university, and that's been the only means that we've been able to move forward. If you take every dollar of state appropriation that we receive and every dollar of in-state tuition that we receive for every in-state student, I'll just use the numbers at ASU, although it's bigger between the three schools, put them all into a pot, spend those dollars only on those students for their education at our extremely efficient rate of operating. Ohio State has 50 employees per 100 students, 50. We have 12. That makes us a lot more efficient. If you did that, you put all that money in a pot, our net operating loss is $225 million a year. That is an environment in which it's very difficult to manage. And so, again, we appreciate very much the notion of investment in students being able to go to college, either community colleges or universities, as a part of this overall initiative as being something that's extremely important. And so from our perspective, here's what we have tried to do. We have built and constructed a university now operating under the assumption that we will engage in lifelong education with every tool, every asset, every means that we have. We will find ways to offer the university as an immersive educational experience at the lowest possible cost to an in-state student, and we work vigorously to be able to do that. But we also work under the assumption that we have to be able to adjust and change, and keep up with economic opportunity, keep up with moving Arizona into the trajectory of being one of the absolute most fantastic examples of a successful democracy with opportunity for all, including economic opportunity. So we're very excited about this initiative, very excited about being able to work with all of you relative to this initiative, and look forward to being able to do that. Thank you.